again, artists. Today we're going to work on adding color to our Draw Your Pet project. So I'm going to start off with using my image of my cat Boo and just adding in, first I'm going to add in some of the shadows. So I think I talked about this a little bit last time that we worked on this, and the shadows are going to be in areas where there are intersections. So it'll be down in here, also down in this area underneath the cat's belly, on the base of the tail. And the reason for that is because, and also under this neck right in here, also right in here, a little bit around the ears, and a bit around the nose. And the reason for that is because the light in my image, which I'll just turn this over so you can see for a second, the light is really coming from a very direct source. It's coming this way. So you can see that like there's highlights here all along the side of the cat right in there, but you do still see shadows all underneath and in here. And you can see this big shadow coming off to the side. That tells you that the light is coming pretty directly like this. Okay, so you can look for shadows. If you are looking at your cat in the sunlight, you'll see some shadows. And if you're not in the sunlight, you may see that there's shadows that are just a little bit more subtle. They're not going to show up quite as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with some shadows underneath there, and we'll be right back. So here is my cat with some shadows, and as you can see, I've put shadows in all the places where things are kind of meeting up to other parts of the cat's body. And I've also put some shadows in here where the light was creating that natural shadow of the cat's whole body like you would see outside. Also, I'm using dark blue, which might be surprising to some of you, but if you look at shadows really closely, you'll notice that they're not usually black. They usually have dark blue in them, depending particularly on what kind of colors are happening around there. So my cat in this picture particularly, there's a lot of oranges and there's a lot of blues in the picture, and the cat has a lot of black in his coat. So the shadows really do have quite a lot of blue in them. I'll just show you in my picture again. It's hard to see from a phone and a computer screen, but you can see quite a lot of blue right in here and in there, some in there. So you want to emphasize when you're doing shadows, whatever color you see. That's what artists tend to do, is they look for the color that are in lights and darks. So lights, wherever there's sunlight hitting something, there tends to be a lot of yellows and oranges, and in shadows there tends to be a lot of blues. So I'm going to keep going with this, and we'll be back in a couple seconds, but I'll be working for a few minutes. Okay, bye. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm making some of my shadowed areas darker and some of them lighter. So I do see a bit of shadow kind of coming across here because of the shape of the cat's body. So the light is kind of hitting up here a bit more, and there's a bit of shadow in here, but it's much lighter than the shadow that's basically in here. So the darkest areas of shadow are here, here, at the this side of the tail, and a bit underneath the cat's chin and nose. So I'm getting those areas darker, and then the other shadowed areas lighter. And you can really kind of start to see the shape of the cat now because of those lights and darks. So at this point, I'm ready to start adding some of those details in. So I'm going to start with creating some of the darker areas of shadow and also the cat's markings along with it. So I've started doing that here. You can kind of see this is one of the, I keep having to do this, but this is one of the lines that kind of come across the cat's body because of his markings, and he's got more of those. So I'm going to be sketching those in now, and you may or may not have something like that with your picture. So we'll be back anyway, and you can start to look at the lines of fur and that kind of thing. So I'll be back to talk about that in a second. Okay, so here's where I'm starting to put in some darks with black, because my cat is mostly black, but I'm also using brown because there's a lot of brown in the coat as an addition to the black. And you can see that I'm starting to do the direction of his fur. So most of my cat's fur is going in this direction on the back of his back. So I'm drawing those lines in that same direction, which is going to make it look a lot more like fur. And I'm going to continue going with that. Although, as you can see, there's parts of these spots on the fur that have darker areas because of the shadows and also the way that the light's hitting. So I am emphasizing that by making those areas darker also. So as you're looking at yours, you might see something like that, and you can really make some variations in there, and it's still going to all make sense. So don't be afraid to try that stuff out. We'll be back again in a second. Okay, so this is the point where I've gotten, except for in this front leg, I just want to show you what I've been working on. So I've gotten most of the shadows in, and I've also started to indicate where all the stripes are in relationship to those shadows. So where I've got that blue in there, I'm also adding brown. So the brown is going where really specific markings on the cat's fur are. And I'm going to be defining that a little bit more. And then I'm going to start to do highlights last. So you can see I've put some highlight here just to indicate and show you where those kinds of things are going to go. And if you look at my picture again, my photograph, you'll see highlights here, you'll see highlights in here, you'll see highlights in there. It's a really complicated thing with a cat that has markings, and also if your dog is like this, or, well, cats are pretty particular in terms of their markings, but you will see that the fur has all this stuff going on. There's lights hitting places, there's the markings of the animal, or whatever the markings are on their fur, and then there's also you know, what direction the light is. So there's all those different factors going into how this is going to look. So if you're working on yours and you're finding it complicated, don't worry. It's complicated for everybody. It's complicated for artists too. So, you know, everybody is going to have a different way to working this out. And you might end up just saying, okay, well, I just want to think about the fur and not so much about the light. And that's okay too, because you'll end up getting still a really good drawing. So it'll be fine. So what I'm going to do next, though, is keep going with my shadows and my markings of the fur, and then I'm going to start working more into the background shadows and some of the bigger shapes that are behind my cat, and then I'm come back and do the highlights. So I'll be back after doing all these shadows and some of the color in the background, and then we'll come in and see the highlights, ways to do the highlights, because I don't want to make this a terribly long video. Okay, so here I have indicated some of the colors in the background. So I put a bit of blue in this very, very back door entranceway here, and then a lighter orange here because it's painted a totally different color from the orange here, and then I've put some shadows in the floor, and I think it's made some nice sense of the space here. I haven't worked yet on the floor here, but I will do that. And I've also put some more shadow in underneath the cat. So I'm going to do a bit more of that, and then I'll be ready to show you all how to do some of the highlights. Okay, I'm at the point now where I'm ready to start putting in some of the highlight colors from my cat's fur. And I'm noticing that where the light had been hitting, right in here and like in here, there's going to be a little bit more yellow, and in other areas there's going to be more of this cream color. So I'm really picking out the two or three colors that are going to work best for my highlights. And I'm going to start with doing some of the things up here in the head and neck, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so here I've started to put in some of those highlight colors, and you can see how that affects the shading and the tone of the overall head and neck. So I'm going to keep working in there with some of those same colors in the rest of the coat, and then I'll be right back. I'm going to try to get this under 10 minutes. Okay, so I think I'm in a pretty good place at this point. I've got a real kaleidoscope of colors in this cat, but it still seems to look like it has some lights and darks in there. I might work a little more in getting the form of this body in here, because I feel like this black kind of makes it flatten out a little bit, but I'm going to work a little more in that, and I'm just excited to see where these drawings take you and how you decide to tackle all of the colors that are in a dog or a hamster or a gerbil, depending on what you are deciding to draw. So I hope everybody that you enjoyed this one, and I'm excited to see how your drawings turn out. And I'll look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, bye.